André-Louis Moreau, law student and godson of Monsieur de Kercadiou, joins a group of strolling players to forget his grief and bitterness. Grief because his friend has been killed unfairly in a duel with Marquis de la Tour d'Azur, and bitterness because Aline, his childhood sweetheart, was on friendly terms with the hated Marquis. And André has sworn to carry on his friend's fight for the people's rights against the aristocrats.
Released in fall 1923, director Rex Ingram's Scaramouche became a photoplay sensation, filling movie theaters throughout the United States and abroad. Screen Opinions, the precursor to today's Rotten Tomatoes, proclaimed Scaramouche certifiably masterful with its 100% Class AA rating. Reviews unanimously lauded its spectacle and historical accuracy, the beauty of sets and costumes, and above all, the emotionally complex performances of its principal actors.
In the light of his previous accomplishments, we may be tolerably sure that any photoplay produced by Rex Ingram is nothing to be sniffed at. Anybody who sniffs during the showing of Scaramouche, his latest feature, which opened at the Cox Theatre last night, will do so not from disdain, but rather because his heart has been touched and his emotions profoundly stirred. To call Scaramouche a fair-sized production is like calling the Sphinx a tidy little statuette or Westminster Abbey a neat little shack. It is on such a large scale that to be properly appreciated, it must be seen more than once. And yet, with all its hugeness, it is anything but unwieldy. So carefully all the factors going into the making of the picture have been coordinated that an almost perfect symmetry and balance have been obtained. Most photoplays of such massive proportions never appeal to more than the eye. They usually fail to reach the heart. Not so with Scaramouche. Among the score or more of persons who play leading parts in the drama, only a few characters are pale and shadowy. All the rest seem to be endowed with living personalities, and whatever they do seems natural and true to type. Moreover, Scaramouche tells a story. An old story, it is true, but one that is well articulated and universally appealing, except to those in whom the spark of romance burns no more. This story stands out against a background that revives some of the most significant events of modern times. The period is that of the French Revolution, when the love of liberty was reborn. This stirring period of history is treated more realistically than it was in Orphans of the Storm, that other screen epic of the French Revolution. There are enough people in the cast to make up a good-sized battalion. The work of the principals is as near perfection as reasonably can be expected. Ramon Navarro gives even a more superb performance than he did in The Prisoner of Zenda. He is equally admirable in every mood, audacious, humorous, romantic, gallant, and at all times puts such enthusiasm into the part that the enthusiasm of the audience follows without fail. Alice Terry, whose beauty is like that of a delicately carved cameo, appears in the principal feminine role, and she displays less of that cold aloofness that somewhat marred her work in previous productions. Louis Stone plays an unsympathetic role with his customary grace and artistry. To give the names of all the other members of the cast would look like a city directory of Hollywood. The settings of the production are as varied and artistic as they are huge. Interiors showing the stately elegance of the times of Louis XVI form a sharp contrast to the turbulent street scenes of the latter part of the picture, when the howling mobs of Paris march through the streets, spreading death and devastation in their wake. Seldom have novels been transformed from the printed page to the screen with as much meticulous care and powerful vividness as has this novel of Raphael Sabatini's. Carefully selected orchestral selections, played by an imposing group of musicians, precede and accompany the action of the photoplay and help to intensify the atmospheric effects as well as the incidents of the drama.
Scaramouche's $1 million-plus budget was 20 times more than an average feature film of the early 1920s, at a time when production rarely exceeded more than a few weeks or even days. Scaramouche required 6 months and included constructing a 60-acre French village in the San Fernando Valley. The authenticity of dress in Scaramouche 1923 starkly contrasts with the 1950s remake. Rex Ingram's Scaramouche also came only 2 years after D.W. Griffith visited the French Revolution in Orphans of the Storm. While large in extras and set design, Griffith's film reveals more about the 1920s than 18th century France and exhibits the melodramatic acting of many silent films. Both Orphans of the Storm and Scaramouche are dramas. Both also have lighter moments. Griffith's comedy, however, often distracts from the story. The buffoonery of his celebratory mob, for example, greatly contrasts with Ingram's more passionate portrayal. Rex Ingram Hitchcock was born in Dublin in 1892. He excelled at art and sports, but an unwillingness to accept rules or direction from school authorities made academics challenging. One school friend described Rex as suffering a lot inside himself. In 1911, 3 years after the death of his mother and shortly before his father's remarriage, Rex relocated to the United States. He studied art at Yale, but he was soon drawn to the budding moving industry, working first as an artist for sets and titles at Edison Studios, then acting in numerous Vitagraph releases before focusing his goals on directing. He dropped the surname Hitchcock, believing it impeded his career. Ingram's unwillingness to accept the authority of studio rules and budgets, however, led to quick changes in employment. He finally found a home in California with Metro Studios. Ingram also found a partner in cinematographer John Seitz, who shared Ingram's vision of film as art rather than mere industry. In Scaramouche, Ingram sought authenticity in architecture and historical details. He even features Danton's authentic rosette. Almost every frame echoes 18th century art and lifestyle. In 1923, Ingram supplied the preface to Victor Freeburg's Pictorial Beauty on the Screen.
In this volume, Dr. Freeburg contends that in order to be classified among the arts, the cinema must become something more than a series of clear photographs of things in motion. In other words, a motion picture must be composed of scenes that have certain pictorial qualifications, such as form, composition, and a proper distribution of light and shade. It is chiefly according to the degree in which these qualities are present in a picture that it can register the full effectiveness of its drama, characterizations, and atmosphere.
Within a few months of Scaramouche's release, Rex Ingram relocated to Europe. His decision had a mix of reasons. He still clashed with studio executives, he didn't like Hollywood's emphasis on mass appeal over art, and he preferred privacy over self-promotion. Ingram continued to produce films until the early 1930s, but he never fully embraced sound. All too often, modern film historians leave him as a footnote, his production and influence frozen in a few condensed years of movie magic. Until the late 1920s, no economical or universal technology allowed studios to produce, or theaters to screen, films with synchronized sound for dialogue, sound effects, or musical score. During its initial long run, Scaramouche would have been mostly accompanied by musicians ranging from solo organ or piano to small bands or even chamber orchestra at larger venues. For feature films such as Scaramouche, studios created music cue sheets. Anchorage's Festival of Music score for Scaramouche draws upon two extant cue sheets, one from UCLA's Performing Arts Special Collections, and the other from the Liam O'Leary Archive at the National Library of Ireland in Dublin. The Metro cue sheet from UCLA is a standard cue sheet. Each numbered cue has specific connection to an action or a narrative title. The sheet lists the piece, short musical incipit, and length of the cue. The resulting musical score is far from continuous. In fact, non-stop music was considered a distraction from the film. Both cue sheets use a mix of found classical and popular music and stock film music. Of the 90 cues on the UCLA sheet, for example, 41 use generic film music with titles such as Heavy Dramatic, mainly by composer and organist Leo Kopinski. By contrast, only 6 of the 92 cues from the Dublin sheet are for stock incidental film music. The location of the cues on the Dublin sheet are mostly identical with the Metro Guide, but the suggested pieces on the Irish cue sheet are accompanied by a helpful column, Style of Music. Anchorage's Festival of Music score will substitute the stock cues with appropriate 18th century music. For example, cue 78, In the Now Silent, calls for Kopinski's Incidental Symphony No. 10, Plaintive. AFM will replace this with a piece of similar character by Marin Murray. Hugo Riesenfeld, who composed film music and created cue sheets for numerous silent films, stressed the importance of choosing a musical theme connected to the story and historical setting. Beethoven's Minuet in G was Scaramouche's theme. The piece appears in association with André and Aline's complicated relationship 12 times on the UCLA sheet and 11 times on the Dublin sheet. This minuet is not only appropriate in character, but it was also composed during the French Revolution, and Beethoven supported early revolutionary reforms. Theme songs also provided marketing and additional revenue opportunities. Fans could purchase the sheet music of a special arrangement with lyrics or the commercial recording.
On your eyes.
Riesenfeld discussed the process of finding appropriate cues as follows.
There are millions of ways of selecting music to serve as accompaniment for a picture, but there are only two ways that a good musician would choose. One is to select beautiful music that is appropriate for the scenes of the picture, and the good musician, inexperienced in motion picture presentation, would undoubtedly follow this course. The second course, and the one that requires the hardest work, is to select music such as would be chosen in the first mentioned way, but with an ear to subjugation. There may be 100 waltzes that would go prettily with certain scenes, but the experienced scorer of motion pictures will, after listening to the piece, know whether it is too striking or even too beautiful.
Musicians often performed live on the set of silent films, blocking out ambient noise and creating moods for actors. Both cue sheets call for numerous appearances of La Marseillaise. The music and lyrics are even built into one title. As the revolution turns violent, the anthem becomes more and more prominent. While filming the storming of the Tuileries, however, Irish-born Ingram insisted on the location band playing Irish nationalistic music such as The Wearing of the Green instead of La Marseillaise. Anchorage's Festival of Music score for Scaramouche retains the cues for the Beethoven, Revolutionary songs, and other 18th century pieces listed on the original cue sheets. For example, during the scenes in the theater, a play within the photoplay, both cue sheets call for excerpts from Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro. The Figaro story was viewed as dangerous by the aristocracy, and André Scaramouche has written a new play with a similar title. Anchorage's Festival of Music score almost exclusively showcases 18th century French music, juxtaposing works by Lully and François Couperin, written during the reign of Louis XIV, with music from the later revolutionary period. This stylistic shift emphasizes the polarization of the aristocracy from the growing cries for political reform. Although many musicians perished during the French Revolution for their close working relationship to king and nobility, composers such as André Crétré or François-Joseph Gossec thrived by adapting a more martial and less ornate musical style. On AFM's YouTube channel, you will find mock-ups for the same Scaramouche scene with different musical choices, the two cue sheet versions and the AFM score. The Dublin cue sheet has two versions, as the cues become before or after the title, allowing for flexibility, but also creating confusion.